They say silence is safe, but in this place, even the silence hums with memory. Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, where ancient rites are not forgotten, where the dead do not sleep quietly, and where every hallway, every shadow, every whispered name means something. Tonight's story is one you should not listen to alone. In an old apartment building, hidden behind peeling wallpaper and rewired circuits, the intercom still crackles to life, even though the woman who used it moved out years ago. Or so they said. But the voicemails keep coming, every night at 3:13 a.m. And when you press play, her voice is waiting, soft, broken, still calling from somewhere deep beneath the building. This is Voicemail from the Basement. She never checked out. Let the story begin.
The elevator wheezed as it ascended, each floor passing with a groan that echoed like a tired breath through the building's hollow core. Nari stepped back against the mirrored wall, clutching the keys to her new apartment, Unit 7B. She blinked up at the fluorescent light that flickered with the uneven rhythm of a pulse. The moving box pressed awkwardly against her hip, and for a brief moment she caught her reflection, pale skin, dark under-eyes, and hair stuck to her temples from the October rain. She looked more like someone leaving a place than entering one. The elevator shuddered to a stop on the 7th floor, doors jerking open with the sound of rusted metal teeth. The hallway greeted her like a mausoleum, dim, narrow, the scent of mold, old paint, and wet concrete curled around her. The light at the end of the corridor buzzed like it was whispering something only the walls understood. Unit 7B was second from the corner. A faded red sticker above the peephole read, "Welcome," in cracked Hangul, a relic from tenants past. She inserted the key. The door groaned open. The apartment was just like the ad said, functional, cozy, quiet. A one-bedroom unit with sliding paper windows that didn't quite close, a kitchen that hadn't been updated since the 90s, and the faint smell of damp wood. But Nari didn't care. She needed the quiet. Seoul had worn her down. The job, the city, the people. She needed somewhere to hide from it all. And for 360,000 won a month, this building, Numhae Apartments, offered just enough shelter without asking for too much of her in return. She unpacked slowly, one box at a time. Books, charging cables, her rice cooker, the old gray teddy bear that had lost one eye years ago. The silence was comforting. Until the first voicemail came. It was 3:13 a.m. when she heard the tone. A low-pitched beep, then static, followed by a voice. Her eyes flicked open in bed. At first she thought it was a dream, but then the intercom buzzed again, faint, almost gentle, like it was trying not to wake her too harshly. Nari sat up, heart thudding. The intercom unit was mounted beside the front door, one of those old outdated models, beige and boxy, with a red light that blinked when a message had been left. She walked over barefoot, half expecting it to be a system glitch, but there it was. One new message. Time, 3:13 a.m. She pressed play. The recording was short. A woman's voice, soft, hoarse, a whisper barely rising above static. "I'm still here. I never left." Nari stared at the machine. The words sank like cold fingers into her spine. She replayed the message. Same voice, same phrase. Not a wrong number, not a prank. The intercom had only one line. It didn't receive outside calls, only internal ones. Tenant to tenant, apartment to apartment. And the woman hadn't introduced herself. No unit number, no context. Nari rubbed her arms and looked around the room. The apartment felt suddenly fuller, as if someone had just left or never had. She deleted the message. She went back to bed, but she didn't sleep. The next morning, the building's hallway looked the same, quiet, dusty. Her neighbors' doors were all closed. She caught the landlord downstairs beside his mop bucket, humming as he scrubbed at a stain on the tile. "Excuse me," she asked, "can the intercom system record prank messages?" He looked up, a short, older man with a wide nose and cigarette fingers. "It's old," he shrugged. "Sometimes it glitches." "But can it send messages from outside the building?" He gave her a look. "No, only tenant to tenant. Why?" She hesitated. "I got a message at 3:13 in the morning." "Ah," he smiled. "Someone probably hit the wrong button. Kids on the 5th floor are always messing around." She nodded, not convinced. That night, she sat on her mattress on the floor, eating cold ramen with the TV on low. She left the intercom volume muted. She tried to ignore the red blinking light that appeared again at 3:13 a.m. One new message. Time, 3:13 a.m. She didn't press play. She unplugged it. But that didn't stop the buzzing. The next day, the building's hallway looked the same. Quiet, dusty. Her neighbors' doors were all closed. She caught the landlord downstairs beside his mop bucket, humming as he scrubbed at a stain on the tile. "Unit 7B, she asked. "That's Mi-young's old place." "Who's Mi-young?" Miss Choi's eyes narrowed. "The girl before you." "She moved out?" There was a pause. "She left long ago." Something in her voice didn't sound certain, as if left was a word used for convenience, not truth. "Did she—" Nari started, then stopped. Miss Choi simply nodded once. "That room is quiet now. It should stay that way." That night, Nari sat in silence. The air in the apartment had changed, thicker, colder. At 3:13 a.m., the intercom lit up again. Unplugged, but still powered. The screen flickered. The speaker crackled. A message played on its own. "I'm still here. I never left." Then static, then silence. Nari turned all the lights in the apartment. She pressed her back against the door and slid down to the floor, listening. No footsteps, no voices, but the walls felt warm, as if someone had just leaned against them moments ago. Outside in the hallway, the security camera above her door rotated slowly. A red light blinked once, then froze. And down in the basement, a soft hum began to buzz through the wires, a sound like breath, trapped in an old machine, waiting to speak again. The next morning arrived without warmth. The gray light filtered through the blinds like something reluctant, as if the sun didn't want to see what had happened in the dark. Nari sat curled on her floor mattress, blanket clutched around her shoulders. The apartment was still, but something felt off. The kind of wrong you couldn't point to, only sense. A subtle rearrangement of air and memory. She stared at the intercom, still unplugged, still blinking. She yanked the plug from the wall again, harder this time, and held the cable in her hand for a moment, just to be sure. Her fingers trembled. The machine had no backup battery, no alternate connection. It should have died, but it hadn't. She needed to know why. Namhai Apartments didn't have a front desk or lobby, just a locked bulletin board in the entrance, yellowed notices, and a single camera mounted above the mailbox rows. Everything else, maintenance, deliveries, packages, happened underground. The basement was 2 floors down, past a steel door with chipped paint and an emergency light flickering above it. She descended the stairs late that afternoon. Each step was colder than the last. She could smell dust before she could see it. The air turned thick, metallic, not just musty, but forgotten. There was no sound, except the soft grind of her shoes on cement. The basement stretched into 3 sections. Old fuse boxes lined one wall, storage units with rusted grates on the other, and a corridor in the back that led to something else. She paused beside the fuse boxes first, each labeled in fading marker. 1A, 2B, 3C, 7B. She traced her finger across the dusty panel for 7B. Someone had scratched a line across the name. No repair ticket, no recent entry. She followed the wires above, thick cords slithering like veins, and noticed that some of them curved toward the back corridor, toward the farthest corner, past the storage cages. That area wasn't lit. No one seemed to use it. She hesitated, then walked toward it. At the far end of the basement, tucked behind two broken vending machines and a stack of unused wooden planks, there was a small metal door. It was unmarked, no number, no sign, only a single red thread tied to the handle, frayed, dusty, limp, as if it had once meant something. She tried the knob. Locked. She pressed her ear against it. At first she heard nothing but silence. Then a hum, so low it might have been imagined. Then a faint sound, like a click. Then static. Then nothing. She pulled away, heart pounding. The sensation that someone was standing just on the other side of the door clung to her like damp cloth. Not watching, just waiting. Back upstairs, she confronted the landlord again. There's a door in the basement, no markings, near the vending machines. He looked up from his broom, paused. That section's been sealed since the fire, years ago. Fire? Just some wiring, nothing serious. The insurance company fixed it. Why is it still locked? He frowned. Some tenant stored junk in there. It's nothing. But it has a red thread. The landlord cut her off, waving her off with a tight-lipped shake of his head. Don't go near it. She stared at him. It's not your problem. That night, she sat in front of the intercom with a notepad in hand. She wrote down the timestamp again, 3:13 a.m. Then the words from the previous night, I'm still here, and below it the ones from the night before, I never left. The messages were short, but they weren't random. They were linked, like a sentence unfolding in pieces, waiting for her to gather them all. And they always came from nowhere. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the light blinked again. One new message. She pressed play. This time there was no voice, only dripping water. The sound of something wet hitting concrete. Steady, slow. Then a dragging noise. Then silence. Then a whisper, so faint she could barely register it. Basement. Her breath caught. She looked around her empty apartment, then back at the intercom. The message had ended. She opened the window and stuck her head out to get air. The night felt thick. No wind, no city sound. Even the neon lights down the street felt dimmer, as if the whole world had lowered its voice. When she looked down 7 stories to the ground below, the basement access door was open. She rushed down barefoot, forgetting even her slippers. The stairwell was darker than before. A single emergency light flickered above the basement entrance, casting shadows that pulsed like breathing. The basement door creaked open at a touch. Inside, the air was colder, heavy with the stench of mildew, old wires, and something older. She made her way to the end, past the fuse boxes, past the storage cages. The unmarked metal door now hung ajar. And the red thread? It was broken, frayed edges dangling like snapped veins. She leaned forward slowly, heart hammering. Inside the room, darkness, deeper than shadow. It swallowed the hallway light completely. And then, A faint sound. Not from inside. From behind her. The intercom on the wall above the fuse boxes lit up. She hadn't even known it had a speaker there. The red light blinked. Then the speaker buzzed. "Don't leave me." She spun around. No one was there. The door beside her creaked wider on its own, and from within, something exhaled. She ran, feet pounding up the stairs, breath ragged, fingers scrambling for the handrail. She didn't stop until she reached her apartment, slammed the door shut, locked it, double-locked it. The intercom inside blinked once, then went dark. Everything was still, but when she looked down at her hands, she realized she was gripping something. A small strip of red thread. She hadn't taken it, but it had followed her back.
The red thread sat curled on her kitchen counter like a living thing, thin, delicate, yet strangely heavy, as if it carried more than its weight. Nari stared at it over her cold tea, fingers trembling slightly with each sip. She hadn't slept. The voicemail, the door, the broken thread, it was all too deliberate. Someone wanted her attention, or something. She thought of Mrs. Choi's words the day before. "That's Mi Young's old place." It echoed now like a warning. Nari knocked on Mrs. Choi's door just before noon. The hallway was quiet, but the building itself never felt truly silent anymore. Even in stillness, there was always the hum, faint, electrical, like old wires whispering behind the walls. Mrs. Choi answered, squinting. "You again?" "I need to ask you something," Nari said, her voice low. The older woman stepped aside wordlessly. Her apartment was the same layout as Nari's, but filled with objects, framed photos, silk pillows, carved figurines, and a shrine table in the corner with incense still burning. "Tell me about Mi Young," Nari said. Mrs. Choi sat down slowly, as if debating whether it was worth the trouble. "She lived in 2F, she said finally. Alone, quiet, kept to herself, too quiet, maybe." "She moved out?" Mrs. Choi's eyes didn't meet hers. "They said she did." "What do you mean, they said?" "There was never a moving truck, never a goodbye. Just one day, her door was locked and the lights never came on again." "Did anyone see her leave?" "No one." Nari leaned forward. "How long ago?" Mrs. Choi paused. 5 years, maybe 6. "And no one checked the room?" "The landlord sealed it, said it was empty. We don't ask questions here." "Why?" Mrs. Choi looked at the incense smoke curling above the shrine. "Because this building remembers." Unit 2F was on the second floor, just around the corner from the stairwell. The door looked like every other in the building, dull gray, dented in the corners, the paint around the peephole flaking like dried skin. But when Nari stood before it, the air felt heavier, not just cold, but compressed, like a breath held too long. She pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Then, faintly, the buzz of static. It was impossible. There were no intercoms on this floor's hallway. She knocked once. No reply. Then again. Still silence. She tried the handle. Locked. But just as she turned to leave, she saw it, a small smudge of red near the base of the door. She knelt down. It wasn't paint. It was thread. A single strand caught beneath the threshold, slowly being pulled inward as if the door was breathing. Back upstairs, she pounded on the landlord's apartment. He opened it shirtless, annoyed, with a cigarette dangling from his lip. "I need to see Unit 2F, she said. "No." "I'm serious. It might be connected to the voicemails I've been getting." He laughed, a sharp, defensive bark. "That unit's been empty for years." "Then prove it. Let me in."
Tenants aren't allowed in sealed units. Why was it sealed? His eyes narrowed. What exactly did you hear? Nari didn't answer. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. There were complaints. Tenants said they heard a woman talking through the walls after she moved out. Talking? Crying. Whispers. Scratching. Did anyone check? Maintenance said the place was empty, but the sounds didn't stop. He looked suddenly much older, like the weight of unspoken things had carved him hollow. Eventually, the complaints stopped. Why? Because everyone who heard her left the building. That night, Nari sat at her desk and searched the apartment name online. Namhae Apartments, Seoul. Most of the listings were old real estate pages. A few complaints about plumbing. One review called it unlucky, but then she found it. An archived forum post dated 6 years ago. Room 2F. Why do I keep hearing her? Posted by Ghost Eyes 87. The post described what sounded eerily familiar. Voicemails from unknown origins. Messages at 3:13 a.m. A woman's voice crying through the intercom. The thread had only one reply. She never moved out, just changed floors. And below that, the account was deleted. At 3:13 a.m., the intercom lit up again. This time, the message was different. You're closer now. Then, a wet sound, like something dragging along linoleum. Then a door creaking, and something whispered in a voice softer than wind. She knows your name. Nari stared at the speaker. Her name had not been mentioned aloud. Not to the intercom, not to anyone in the building, except Mrs. Choi. She picked up her phone, opened her audio recorder app, and replayed the voicemail twice, documenting every sound, every syllable. She looked at the waveform. The message ended with something strange. A heartbeat. Slow, loud, then silent. She played it back again, and this time, just before the end, she heard something else. A whisper, hidden beneath the final breath. A name. Nali. Her name, not spoken, not addressed, but confessed, like a memory that didn't belong to her. The next day, she returned to 2F. She brought incense, a lighter, a thin piece of paper folded 3 times. She placed the incense on the hallway floor just outside the door and lit it. The flame wavered, then steadied. As the smoke curled, the silence of the hallway seemed to deepen, like the building itself had paused to listen. She sat cross-legged in front of the door, waited, felt the cold seep through her skin. Then, the faintest knock from inside the unit. Once, twice, then the soft rustle of fabric like someone turning over in bed. And then, the sound of breathing. Nari leaned forward. A whisper seeped from under the door. Don't let them lock me in again.
There are some times of night that feel older than others. Not just late, not just dark, but ancient. Moments so still, so forgotten by the living, that only the dead still keep appointments there. For Nari, that time had a number now. 3:13 a.m. It was no longer just the hour between yesterday and tomorrow. It had become something else. A summoning, a door, a heartbeat in the quiet. That night, she waited for it. She didn't sleep. She didn't pretend to sleep. She sat by the intercom with her phone's recorder open, a notebook on her lap, pen in hand. The second hand on her clock crawled toward the minute. She didn't blink. And then it happened. 3:13. No chime, no announcement, no ringing. Just that same soft click, followed by the quiet hum of the old intercom powering up,
even though it was still unplugged. And the voice came through. Not screaming, not crying, just there. One door is open, but the others stay closed. Static followed, then a sound like someone slowly turning pages in a wet book. They think I'm gone, but time doesn't work the same down here. A breath, then silence. Nari hit pause, saved the file, wrote the entire message word for word. But something else bothered her. The timestamp on the recording app. 3:14 a.m. A full minute off. She rewound. The message hadn't started until exactly 60 seconds after the intercom activated, and yet she'd heard it in real time. The file name said 314, but her ears said 313. That number kept returning. The next morning, she visited the small tea shop across the street, run by a soft-spoken man in his 60s named Mr. Park. He'd lived in the neighborhood for decades. She asked about Namhae Apartments. He gave her a tired smile. "Still standing, huh? You knew someone who lived there?" "A few, back in the 90s, early 2000s, but people don't stay long." "Why not?" He stirred her tea carefully. "There's something wrong with the bones of that place," he said. "Not the structure, the time." "The time? You ever notice how the clocks in that building drift?" Nari blinked. "What do you mean?" "They're always just a little off. 10 seconds here, 2 minutes there. Even the tenants say their alarms don't work right." He leaned in. "And then there's the hour." "What hour?" He didn't speak it. He just held up 3 fingers, then 1, then 3. 3:13. Back home, Nari checked the old analog clock on her wall. It ticked at a normal pace, but when she compared it to her phone, it was 4 minutes slow. Her microwave was 2 minutes fast. Her wristwatch? Dead. The digital clock in the hallway? Blinking 3:13 over and over like it was caught. Every clock in her apartment was at war with time, except the intercom. It always activated on schedule. No delay, no drift. Always 3:13. That night, the message came again. This time, the voice was layered, 2 whispers overlapping. "Which day is this? Which year?" Then a sound like wires snapping. "Time is where she's buried." And then a soft, distant ring, as if from an old rotary phone far away, echoing through pipes. "I tried to leave, but every step led back to the basement." She played it again. That final phrase, "led back to the basement," made something tighten in her chest. The red thread, the door, the room they never opened. She had thought she was moving forward, investigating, discovering. But what if she was being led backward? She searched online again. This time, she looked not for Namhae Apartments, but for 3:13 a.m. haunting. Dozens of results flooded in, mostly ghost forums, conspiracy boards, and digital archives of urban legends. But across different cities, years, and languages, she kept finding the same pattern. Voicemails at 3:13 a.m. People reported hearing the same phrases. "I never left. Check the basement. She's still there." Some claimed they'd seen faces in their intercom monitors. Others said their clocks all died after they tried to record the message. And one user, username Basement Echo, posted the final entry before deleting their account.
I answered the call once. It wasn't from this year. Nari read it twice, then 3 times. Her throat tightened. What did they mean, not from this year? She opened her message archive on the intercom. There were 6 recordings now. She scrolled through them, highlighting each timestamp. 3:13 a.m., 3:13 a.m., 3:13 a.m. But then she noticed something strange. The dates were shifting. 2 of the messages were dated years in the past, but the apartment's intercom didn't have an internet connection. It had no way to fetch old timestamps, and yet there they were. Even stranger, when she played the oldest one, she heard a voice she hadn't heard before. Younger, afraid, crying softly. Please, if anyone hears this, my name is Lee Mi-young. I'm in room 2F. I haven't seen the sun in 6 days. The lights won't turn on. The phone keeps ringing, but no one ever answers. I think the building forgot me. Then, silence. Then, that night, she sat in the dark, listening to her own breathing. Then, at 3:13, the red light blinked, the machine powered on, and the message this time was, no words, only footsteps, wet, dragging, approaching, until they sounded like they were just outside her door. Then, a knock. Not from the intercom, from the door itself. One knock, then another. Then, the intercom crackled. Time doesn't forget what it swallows. She didn't sleep. She sat with the lights on until sunrise. When she finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. But on the floor in front of her doormat was something that hadn't been there before. A single old cassette tape. No label, no case. Just a scrap of red thread looped around it, like a noose.
The cassette tape sat on her desk like an accusation. No label, no instructions, just a quiet presence, pulsing with meaning. The kind of object that didn't just appear, it was delivered, a breadcrumb from something watching. Neri stared at it for hours before finally picking it up. The red thread wrapped around it left a faint mark on her palm. It felt worn, like it had passed through many hands, or none at all. She didn't own a cassette player, but she knew someone who might. Mr. Kang was the only tenant on the first floor who seemed to enjoy company. A retired electrician, he spent his afternoons seated on a plastic stool by the laundry room, smoking and muttering about better days. She found him exactly there. "Kang Song-se-nim," she greeted. "Do you still fix old audio equipment?" He looked up from his cigarette. "Still, I never stopped." She held out the tape. His eyes narrowed. "Where'd you get this?" "It was left at my door." He turned it over. "This tape's older than you, miss. Can you play it?" He grunted and waved her inside his cluttered apartment, where ancient speakers lined the shelves, dust blanketed every surface, and a reel-to-reel system sat like a sleeping animal on the desk. He popped the cassette into a vintage deck. The machine clicked, then hummed, then played. At first, just silence. Then soft static. A voice emerged, broken, slow, recorded in a whisper. "Recording this in case they find me. Name's Lee Mi-young, Unit 2F, Namhae Apartments." Neri stiffened. Kang glanced at her, brows raised. "The intercom's still working, even though the building says it's been rewired. The red light never turns off anymore. Static. A faint crackle. A sob. They say no one lives in the basement, but sometimes when I press the intercom button late at night, someone answers. She doesn't say her name. She just hums. More static. Last night, I heard my own voice on the intercom, but I hadn't spoken. I was asleep. Then silence. And just when Nary thought it was over, the same voice whispered one final sentence. If you're hearing this, then I never got out. The tape ejected with a soft click. The air in the room felt suddenly wrong, too heavy, too aware. Kang took a long drag from his cigarette. That voice, he muttered. I heard her once. Nary's eyes widened. You did? He nodded slowly. Years ago, through the old system, before they replaced it. I thought they rewired everything. They tried, after the fire, but the bones of this building, they're stubborn. Power flows through more than wires. What do you mean? He looked at her with tired eyes. Sometimes circuits die, but the connections stay alive. Back in her apartment, she stared at the intercom again. She traced her finger over its edges. The casing was yellowed with age, but solid. She reached behind and followed the cable down the wall. It snaked into a narrow groove behind the kitchen shelving, then vanished into the concrete. But something caught her eye. A second wire, thinner, older, running alongside the new one. She hadn't noticed it before. Curious, she followed it. The thin cable curved downward, beneath the floorboards, behind the cupboards, down into the hallway wall, leading back toward the stairwell. She followed it like a thread. 2 floors down, in the basement, she crouched beside the fuse boxes. There she saw it again, the same thin cable, spliced in half and reconnected with tape. It vanished into the ceiling above, but beside it, a metal junction box, unlabeled, old. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside, rusted switches, dust, and a cassette deck. Not a digital system, an analog voicemail recorder, the kind used decades ago in tenant-to-tenant buildings, completely disconnected, yet warm to the touch. And above it, someone had scratched 3 words into the metal. She never left. She stepped back. Everything clicked at once. The intercom she used each night wasn't connected to the building's official system. It was connected to this, the old bones Kang had mentioned, a system that had been decommissioned but never dead. Somehow the messages weren't being sent. They were being replayed. Echoes of a past no one buried properly. That night, she didn't wait for 3:13. She pressed the button early. The intercom lit up. No beep, no static. Just a woman humming. Soft, off-key, the tune of a lullaby. Then, "Why are you listening before I call?" She froze. The voice was aware. It wasn't just a memory. This one was present. I whispered back, "Who are you?" The reply was instant. "You already know." Then the light blinked once, and the intercom powered off. She didn't sleep. Instead, she returned to Kang's apartment in the morning. What happens if a system keeps playing messages from someone who's not here anymore? She asked. He looked up, then stood slowly. "Come with me," he said. He took her down to the fuse box room again, then pointed to a thick binder buried beneath old manuals. He opened it. Inside were service records, names, units. One caught her eye. Room 2F, intercom malfunction, repair attempt failed. She flipped to the notes. The tech had written, "Voice playback persists despite full disconnect. Source unclear. System behaves as if power is coming from inside the unit. Recommend sealing room." Kang closed the binder. They never figured it out, so they just gave up. And Mi Young? No one ever saw her again, just her voice. He looked at her gravely. Some machines die, others remember. That night, the intercom didn't blink. Not at 3:13, not at all. Just silence. It was worse than the messages, because now she missed the hum, the crackle, even the warnings. It was like walking into a room where a crying child had suddenly gone quiet, not because they were comforted, but because they'd started watching. At 4:06 a.m., the intercom screamed. Not a voice, a high-pitched shriek of feedback, raw and wet. It rattled her windows. She dropped her cup. It shattered. The machine lit up in red. Message playing. She ran to it, but the speaker only hissed. Then, "Don't let them replace it." Then silence. And then a final sound. Not a message, but a click from the cassette tape on her desk. It had rewound itself and began playing again without being touched. When Nari opened her apartment door the next morning, the hallway was no longer empty. A single thread of red string had been taped along the base of the wall, starting from her doorstep and stretching toward the stairwell, thin, frayed, and humming faintly in the morning light. She stared at it, breath caught in her throat. Red thread. Again. It had been on the basement door, around the cassette tape, and now it was here, leading her somewhere, or warning her not to follow. She bent down. It wasn't string from a sewing kit. It felt old, like hair woven with cotton, slightly damp and warm, as if someone had just set it down. She followed it. The thread slithered down the stairwell like a trail of blood someone had tried to clean. It passed each landing, third floor, second, first, then turned at the basement door and slid under it. Back to the dark, back to the door that never opened all the way. Nari hesitated at the threshold. The emergency light above the basement door buzzed dimly, casting a crimson glow across the tiled floor. The scent of dust and mold rolled up from below like an invitation from something ancient. She took a deep breath and descended. The red thread led her deeper this time, past the fuse box room, past the rusted vending machines, until it reached the unmarked metal door again. Except now, the door was open, no longer locked, no longer waiting. Inside was a narrow room, barely large enough to stand in. The air was dense, the walls damp, and there, lining the concrete from floor to ceiling, were dozens of red threads nailed into the wall like veins. Each one trailed from a cassette tape pinned into the wall with rusted nails. And at the center, a wooden stool, empty, facing a wall-mounted intercom speaker, ancient, dented, and still blinking red. Nari's chest tightened. She knew what she was looking at, a place where someone sat, night after night, sending messages, or trying to get out. She stepped forward and reached for one of the cassettes. On the back, a name written in faded ink. Mi Young, Night 6. She took another. Mi Young, Night 13. Each tape was numbered, some labeled No Answer, others Static Only, and a few with a single word, Red. She didn't understand what they meant, but one thing was certain: this wasn't just haunting, it was ritual. She played one of the tapes on the rusted deck mounted to the far wall. The speaker hissed. Then the voice returned. I've stopped trying to sleep. Every time I do, I hear her walking the halls again, but no one else does. The thread keeps growing. Every morning I tape it down, but by night it's moved. I thought I was tying myself to the living, but I think I've just bound myself to this place. Then silence. Then a single sharp breath, like someone realizing they had just sealed their own fate. When she stepped back into the hallway, she noticed something else. Every floor now had red thread, trailing in long curves along the walls, wrapped around door handles, stuffed into the cracks beneath floorboards. It had spread overnight like roots or veins. No one else seemed to see it. The old man in 4A stepped out to check his mail, walking directly over the thread as if it didn't exist. A young woman on 6C passed her in the hallway, earbuds in, stepping aside without comment. They didn't see it, but it was everywhere now, and it was tightening. Back in her apartment, she looked up red threads in folklore. In East Asian traditions, red thread was used to represent fate, ties between souls, connections that could not be broken even by death. But in older, darker versions of the stories, red thread was used to bind spirits to the earth, to keep the restless close, to anchor the dead, especially those who had not received a proper farewell, especially women, especially those who died alone. That night, she waited. 3:13 a.m. arrived. The intercom blinked. She pressed record. The voice was stronger now, no longer weak, no longer whispering. I've tied myself to the building so they wouldn't forget me, but they stopped listening. So I found another way. A pause. Then the sound of nails being driven into wood. You opened the room. That means it's your turn now. Then a long, slow hum, rising and falling like a heartbeat. And then, what color is your thread? The message ended. The light turned off, but from the hallway, she heard something unraveling, the soft pull of string being dragged toward her door. When she stepped outside, there was no one there. But now, the red thread wasn't just along the walls. It had been looped around her doorknob 3 times, tied in a knot only funeral monks use when sealing a death shroud. And hanging from it was a single black and white photograph. A girl, pale, blank-eyed, standing in front of a wall of intercom units. And behind her, just barely visible, Nari recognized the same stool, the same cassette tapes, and in the corner of the photograph, someone else was standing behind the girl, not visible, just a shadow, watching. The cassette tapes had numbers, dozens of them. But what unnerved Nari the most was how many were labeled unheard. Not broken, not erased, just ignored. Mi-young had recorded message after message, speaking into the void, hoping someone might answer, and no one ever did. Until now. Nari laid the tapes out across her floor. Her apartment had become something else, a shrine, a listening chamber. The air was thick with silence, like the kind that gathers in a church after the congregation leaves. She had no shrine table, no incense, just dust and plastic and ghosts. She picked a tape marked Unheard, 313, red, night 15, and slid it into her borrowed cassette player. It clicked, hummed, then played. She started speaking through my walls now. Not words, not full sentences, just pieces of breath, like she's remembering how to talk. A pause, then a faint knocking sound. Last night I left the message on the intercom, but the voice that played it back wasn't mine. Static. It repeated my words, but slower, like it was learning, like it was listening. The idea that the intercom was not just a transmitter, but a mirror, chilled her. What if the ghost didn't just want to be heard? What if she wanted to become the voice? What if every message, every whisper, was just practice? Nari went to her closet and pulled out the small box of old electronics her father had given her years ago. Wires, adapters, and tucked into the bottom, a dusty cassette-to-digital converter. She plugged it in, started transferring Mi Young's tapes onto her laptop, one by one. As each recording digitized, she listened with headphones, close, intent, alert for sounds others may have missed. She didn't expect what she found, because in the background of every single message was her own apartment. Footsteps on wooden floorboards, the creak of her bathroom door, the click of her fridge. A cough. At first she thought it was coincidence, that maybe Mi Young's apartment had shared the same layout. But then she heard it. Her voice. A quiet recording of herself from days ago, saying, "This place feels off." She paused the playback. When had she said that? She rewound her memories. That exact sentence, she had whispered it 3 nights ago when speaking to herself in the dark. She had never recorded it, never said it aloud to anyone, and yet Mi Young's tape had captured it, which meant something had been recording her. She replayed every file, turning the volume up, isolating the layers of sound. She heard herself brushing her teeth, typing on her laptop, sleeping. In one recording, the tape labeled Unheard, Night 19, she heard herself talking in her sleep. Who is it? Then, after a pause, Mi Young's voice answered, "I used to ask the same thing." The intercom was not just connected to her speaker, it was listening, constantly, recording, feeding the ghost more of her, every movement, every word, every breath. Each night at 3:13, the ghost didn't reach out to her. She simply returned the parts of Nari she had taken, distorted, decayed, replayed. She unplugged the intercom again. This time she pried the cover off completely, exposing the wires, the circuit board, the microphone. She cut every wire, left it in pieces on her floor. But even then, the cassette deck on her desk began to spin. A new tape she hadn't touched yet began to play. There was no label, just static at first. Then Mi Young's voice, breathless. I tried to destroy mine too, but she'd already heard enough. A pause, then a second voice, lower, less human, like a version of Mi Young, broken through repetition. If you hear her enough times, she becomes you. The tape stopped. Her phone buzzed. An alert popped up. New voice memo saved, 3:13 a.m. But she hadn't recorded anything. She opened the voice memo app, played it. Her own voice. If you hear her enough times, she becomes you. She dropped the phone. The sound kept playing. Becomes you. Then a second voice joined in. Not Mi Young, not Nari. A third voice, garbled, echoing, feminine, and unnatural. "Isn't that what you wanted?" She stepped outside, desperate for air. The hallway was empty, but now the red thread ran not just along the walls. It was looped around every doorknob on the floor, like a web, a snare. Her neighbor in 7C opened their door, saw her, and froze. They stared at the red thread on their own handle, then at Nari. "You see it too?" they whispered. Nari nodded. "I thought I was imagining it, but every time I cut it, it grows back." "Have you heard anything?" A silence, then a slow nod. "I hear my mother. She died last year, but last night I heard her call my name from the speaker." Nari's stomach twisted. "It's not her," she said. But I still answered. That night, Nari found a final unlabeled cassette tape hidden inside her kitchen cabinet. She hadn't placed it there, but it was waiting. She played it. At first, it was just silence. Then, breathing. Then a new voice. Not me young, not Nari. Something older. Slower. "You're becoming clearer now." Then static. Then, layered beneath the hiss, she heard her own voice whisper something she never said. "I want to stay." She slammed the tape deck shut, pulled the plug from the wall, but as she did, the intercom, the one she had torn apart, buzzed back to life. No wires, no power, just a red light blinking in the dark. Message received. And the final line that played, "I've recorded enough of you now. You can rest."
By the seventh night, Nari had stopped pretending she could outwait the voices. You could ignore a sound, but not an echo. Echoes find you again. The recordings had begun playing on their own. Her phone, her laptop, even her alarm clock, all carrying fragments of Myung's voice, as if the whole building were becoming one giant recorder. The last voicemail she heard was different. No words, just a dial tone, over and over, until it cut to a single sentence. "Come downstairs, I'm still on the line." She hadn't seen an active phone line in years, but the sound felt familiar, like something older than memory, a tone from a time before mobile phones, before screens, something from the analog age, from the world Myung had never left. So Nari followed it, down the stairs, past the peeling wallpaper, past the taped-up red threads that now hung like veins across the walls. The basement door stood open. The light above it flickered, not in white, but in dull orange, like the color of dying embers. The air was colder than before, but the sound of the dial tone was unmistakable, coming from deep within. She found it at the far corner of the basement. A phone booth. An old metal-framed relic, half buried behind forgotten bicycles and broken mops. Its glass walls were scratched and fogged with age. The rotary phone inside sat cradled, receiver dangling, swaying gently as if someone had just stepped out moments ago. She stepped closer. The booth hummed softly, not from power, but from memory. Her reflection warped in the curved glass. She saw herself, pale, wide-eyed, trembling, and behind her reflection, for a split second, another woman, a shadow in red. She blinked. Gone. The door to the booth creaked open with a hiss. Dust spilled out like breath. The receiver swung slightly, and the line whispered a single pulse of static. She reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the receiver, the air tightened, like someone had clutched her throat. The static cleared, and then through the line, "You finally picked up." Nari froze. The voice was faint, familiar, female. But not just one voice, layered. Mi Young's and her own, overlapping, merging, echoing through the same throat. You've been listening to me. Now listen through me. The booth's interior light flared to life, flickering yellow, then red. And on the metal frame of the phone she saw it. Fingertip scratches, hundreds of them. Each carved into the steel with desperate precision. Some formed letters, some were just lines, tally marks, some words. Stay. She answers. Time repeats. She lifted the receiver to her ear again. Mi Young, she whispered. Static. Then, laughter. Names don't matter here, only voices. Then louder now, as if the speaker were right beside her. I stayed too long. Now the line won't hang up. The hum in the booth deepened, vibrating through the floor, through her feet, through her chest, as though the whole building had become an extension of the line. And then the intercom in her apartment crackled to life upstairs, faintly through the ceiling. Her own voice. Don't pick up. But she already had. The sound shifted. The voice on the receiver lowered, slowed, until it became almost inhuman, as though recorded on warped tape, unraveling and reversing. Through the distortion, words emerged. Every building keeps its calls. Every message needs an answer. You heard me. Now you're next. Nari tried to pull the receiver away from her ear, but it stuck. Her fingers wouldn't move. Her hand felt glued to the plastic. She yanked harder. The sound distorted, higher, harsher, a shriek of metal and static. Then the line went dead. The receiver dropped from her grip, swinging slowly, tapping the metal wall of the booth. Tap, tap, tap. The booth light flickered once more, then died. Nari stumbled out, gasping. The air was cold again, the basement silent. But when she turned back, the booth's glass door had shut on its own. Inside, through the foggy pane, she could see something faintly glowing. A figure, seated inside, holding the receiver to her ear. A woman in a red blouse, head bowed, still listening. When she returned to her apartment, she realized her phone was gone. It wasn't in her pocket, not in her bag, not on her desk. Then the intercom beeped. 1. New message. 3:13 a.m. She pressed play. The sound of a dial tone. Then her own voice, faint, shaking. I can't find my phone. I think I left it in the booth. Then Mi Young's voice overlapped hers, whispering in sync. That's where mine went too. Her chest constricted. She ran back down the stairs, barefoot, the hall spinning around her in dizzying loops. The basement light flickered, the walls pulsing red. When she reached the booth, the glass was fogged completely over. Inside, resting on the seat, was her phone. Screen lit. Recording. The timer read 3:13 a.m. The same minute. The same curse. And as she stared through the glass, her phone vibrated once, a new voicemail notification lighting the screen. One new message. Sender, unknown number. She didn't open the booth. She couldn't. because through the glass she could see her own reflection in the fogged pane, and it was holding the phone, smiling, listening. The door to 2F had always been there, plain, gray, quiet. Just another unit in a building full of the living pretending they were alone. But now, it didn't look like just a door anymore. It looked like a boundary, a threshold between what was once known and what had always been watching. The morning after the phone booth, Nari stood in front of Unit 2F again. She had brought nothing with her, no tools, no incense, no prayers. Only breath, only curiosity. The red thread was still visible beneath the door, but it had grown thicker, as if spun anew in the night. It pulsed faintly under the fluorescent lights, like it carried a heartbeat. She tried the knob, locked. She placed her palm against the wood. It was warm, not room temperature warm, body warm, as though someone were standing on the other side, pressing their palm against the same spot. She pulled her hand back. Then she reached into her pocket and found something unexpected. A key, old, brass, cold. She hadn't brought it, had never seen it, but there it was, attached to a red thread. The key slid into the lock with an ease that felt unnatural. Click. The door opened without resistance. What greeted her wasn't dust or decay. It was stillness, perfect, frozen, intentional. The apartment looked as though someone had simply stepped out 5 minutes ago to buy groceries, perhaps, or answer a call. Furniture covered in white sheets, undisturbed. A table set for one. A glass of water, still half full, sitting on the counter. A faint smell of lavender, aged and thinned. She stepped inside. The air was warm, but not stale. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was listening. She moved slowly, carefully peeling back the white sheets. A floral armchair, a lace table runner, a pair of worn slippers by the door. All ordinary, all wrong. She turned to the wall beside the kitchenette. There, pinned with a rusted nail, hung a calendar, dated 6 years ago. The month, October. The current month. But it wasn't the date that caught her breath. It was the red circle drawn around a single day, October 13th, today. She stepped into the bedroom. The bed sheets were tucked in tight. An old radio sat on the nightstand, turned off. Beside it, a notebook. She opened it. Inside, the pages were filled with one repeated sentence. I don't hear me. They won't hear me. They refuse to hear me. Every page, over and over. But then, at the final page, something new. If you're reading this, you must be a listener. Please don't become a recorder, too. The bathroom door was ajar. She pushed it open. Inside, a small vanity mirror, fogged. A sink with a cracked bowl. A toothbrush still damp. And written in faint condensation on the mirror, "You're closer than I ever got." Nari stepped back. Her heart pounded. She didn't want to admit it, but something inside her felt recognized by the apartment, as if it had been waiting for her, not just as a visitor, but as a replacement. Suddenly, from the living room, a click, a soft mechanical whir. She rushed back. On the floor, near the small wooden table,
A cassette recorder had turned itself on. No one had touched it. No one was there. But the wheels turned, and Mi Young's voice whispered, "I thought if I left enough of myself behind, someone would piece me together. But the building won't let go of what it understands. It understands pain. It understands silence. It understands me now." Then the voice shifted, just slightly. A cadence that wasn't Mi Young's anymore. A pause. Then, unmistakably, Nari's voice whispered, "And now, it understands you too." The cassette ejected. And from the window, light shifted. She turned. The outside looked wrong. The buildings across the street weren't there. Just fog, endless, pressing against the glass, as if the world had been peeled away while she wasn't looking. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out. No signal, no time, just a blank screen and one notification. New voicemail, saved to device. No caller ID, no timestamp. She pressed play. "You unlocked my room. Now the door doesn't know who belongs here." Then another voice, hers again, whispering, "Maybe I do belong here." She ran for the door, opened it, but the hallway was different. Dimmer, longer, more red thread. Now it ran along the ceiling, looped like veins through flesh. The walls pulsed softly, almost breathing. As she stepped out, the door to 2F closed behind her, and when she turned back, it was gone. No knob, no frame, just wall. She ran upstairs, past her own floor, to the rooftop. She needed sky, fresh air, a break in the ritual. But when she opened the rooftop door, all she saw was fog. Not the city skyline, just an endless gray curtain. And then faintly through it, a dial tone. She went back down, past the mailbox rows, out the building's entrance. But something stopped her, because there in the front lobby, for the first time, stood a new tenant board. And beneath, current residents, someone had added her name, 7B, Kwan Nari. Just below it, someone had written, in red ink, "Checked in, October 1st. Checked out, dash." No date, just an empty space, waiting. The static began inside her ears, not in the speakers, not from the intercom, but from within, like her own thoughts had started to detune, as if her mind had become a radio dialing through a haunted frequency. She covered her ears. It didn't stop, because it wasn't sound. It was presence. Something was no longer just watching. It was waiting to be seen. That evening, Nari unplugged every electronic device in her apartment. Her laptop, her clock, her television, even the fridge. The only light came from a small candle on the windowsill, flickering as if it too feared the dark. She turned the mirror on her wall to face backward. The glass had begun to ripple at night, reflecting things she hadn't done. Her own reflection blinking when she hadn't. Mouths moving before her lips caught up. She no longer trusted mirrors, or screens, or silence. At 3:13 a.m., her doorbell rang. Not the intercom, the physical bell. She hadn't heard it since moving in. She didn't move. The candle trembled. Again, ding dong! She crept to the door, barefoot. No peephole light, no hallway sound. She looked through the viewer. No one there. But the hallway wasn't empty. Something stood just outside the frame. A corner of red fabric, bare toes on the linoleum, hair long and black, trailing past the top edge of the lens. Whoever, whatever it was, had positioned themselves to avoid being fully seen, but their edges were there, pressing against the perimeter of her vision. She stepped back from the door, and the peephole slowly began to fog from the other side, as if someone were breathing into it. She didn't scream, she didn't run. She just stepped away, closed the bedroom door, locked it. But the static followed. Not loud, just close. The kind of sound you hear when someone's lips are almost at your ear. She lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The cracks there had formed a shape. She was sure of it now. A woman curled in the corner, arms around her knees, face buried. Made of shadows, as if the apartment itself remembered her. The next morning, Nari walked the hall in silence. On every door, the red thread had changed. Now it hung in vertical lines, tied at the top like funeral charms, like talismans meant to bind something in. She passed 5C. The door was open, empty. Inside, an overturned chair, a wall covered in pencil lines, hundreds of tiny tick marks, counting days or years. On the desk, a single phrase written in large letters. She cannot leave if she is seen. And beneath it, do not look directly. That evening, she left the candle burning again. She sat on the floor facing the intercom. It was still unplugged, but the screen flickered to life. For the first time, it showed video. Grainy, black and white, flickering. The hallway, her door. And standing outside, the woman. Clear now, still. Hair hanging like curtains. Eyes dark, wide, hollow. Not angry, just tired, as if the world had moved on without her, and she had been trying to call back every night to ask where it had gone. The image glitched. Then she moved. Not in real time, in frames, like old CCTV footage skipping on damaged tape. One step forward. Pause. One step closer. The screen pulsed. Then a single word appeared, typed in jagged pixels. Listen. The intercom speaker crackled. Then, Nari's voice. Can you hear me now? Then Mi Young's voice layered beneath. Can you see me now? Then, silence. Except for one thing. The smell. A sudden sharp scent filled the apartment. Not decay, but smoke. She rushed to the window. The street below was clear, but the hallway? Smoke rolled in beneath the door. She flung it open and stepped into fog. Not thick enough to choke, just thick enough to hide. The entire hallway was bathed in a red glow, faint as if lit by a candle deep inside the building's walls. She turned left, right, nothing. Then, the faintest static from behind her. She turned back. The woman stood at the end of the hall, not on the screen this time, in real space. Red dress, black hair, bare feet. No eyes, just darkness where eyes should be. She raised one hand, and in her palm, not a weapon, not a curse, but an old intercom microphone ripped from the wall. She lifted it to her mouth, spoke, but no sound came out. Nari heard it in her chest. You seen me." Then she vanished, not in a blink, but in interlaced lines like she had been made of static all along, pulled apart by invisible fingers, rewound into a cassette. Back inside her apartment, Nari found the candle had gone out, and across her mirror, in jagged letters, a message written with fingernail scratches. "Now they'll see you too." That night, at 3:13 a.m., the intercom did not beep, but her laptop screen lit up. A new folder had appeared on her desktop, named REC 2F, Final. Inside, one file. She clicked. It was a video, shot from a hallway camera. Her hallway. The footage was silent, black and white, time-stamped 3:13 a.m. The video showed her standing outside her apartment, barefoot, holding a microphone in her hand, staring directly into the camera, not blinking, not moving, just smiling. Paperwork never lies. Or that's what Nari believed, until she became someone the paperwork forgot. The morning after the video, after seeing herself on the camera when she had never left her apartment, Nari went to the front desk of the property management office down the street. It was a plain office with dusty blinds and a flickering fan. An older man sat behind the counter, eyes red from boredom or insomnia. "I live in Namhae Apartments," she said. He nodded without looking up. "Unit 7B, Kwan Nari." He began typing. His keys clacked like slow footsteps. But then he paused, frowned, typed again, then again. Finally, he looked up. "I don't see your name." "What?" "There's no tenant listed in 7B. She felt her stomach knot. "I've been living there almost 2 weeks." He shook his head. "The last recorded tenant was someone named Jang Ho Sok, moved out in 2019. "That's impossible. The landlord gave me the key." He clicked through a few more screens. "We haven't processed a lease or payment from that unit in over 4 years. Nari leaned over the counter. "Then who's paying the electricity?" He hesitated. "There's no record of an account." She felt the color drain from her face. No name, no payments, no trace. She'd been staying in a room that didn't exist. Outside, the sky was dim. The clouds hung too low, as if the city itself were being smothered under wet wool. She walked to the local police precinct, hands trembling. A young officer greeted her with a tired smile. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to request a missing persons file." "Who's missing?" Nari swallowed. "Lee Mi-young. She used to live in my building, apartment 2F. He raised an eyebrow. "How long ago?" 6 years, she said softly. He blinked. "That's quite a delay. I only just found out." He nodded, typing into the system. A minute passed. Then 2. He frowned. No file. She wasn't reported? No missing person report? No ID on file for that name in our tenant registry? Nothing linked to Namhae Apartments? He looked up. "Are you sure you have the right name?" She opened her phone, scrolled to the photos she had taken of the cassette labels, the calendar, the scratched mirror. But the folder was gone, vanished. Every image, every recording, even the audio file she had saved. She stared at the empty screen. "I had proof," she whispered. The officer leaned back. "Look, sometimes these buildings have ghost stories, yeah? Tenants pass down rumors, talk about suicides, haunted rooms, that kind of thing. But most of the time, she existed," Nari snapped. He paused, then asked carefully, "And did she speak back?" Nari froze. He knew. Maybe not all of it, but something. He pulled out a drawer and laid a piece of paper on the desk. A list of buildings with complaints. Namhae Apartments was on it, circled. Beside it, in blue ink, unverified intercom activity. Anonymous female voice reported. No source found. "Do people still hear her?" Nuri asked. He looked down. Then, quietly, "They used to." Back at Namhae Apartments, the halls were quieter than usual. Too quiet. The red thread had vanished, no longer taped along the walls, no longer draped over knobs or floors. Gone, like it had been retracted. But something else replaced it. At every doorframe, someone had taped a small square of white paper, a talisman, protection, or a warning. She reached her own door. No talisman. Just her name, Kwan Nuri, written in black ink on a yellowing slip of paper taped above the peephole. But something was off. The handwriting wasn't hers. She stepped inside. The apartment was unchanged. Same floor, same window, same dust. But when she checked her closet, her suitcase was gone. Her clothes, missing. Her charger, gone. Even her toothbrush had vanished. It was like she had never unpacked, like she had never lived here at all. She rushed to the mirror. Fogged. She wiped it. Her reflection didn't move. Not at first. Then it blinked, but she hadn't. She stumbled backwards, gasping. The reflection tilted its head, smiled, and whispered, "You're becoming a better copy every day." Panicked, she ran to the hallway, pounded on Mrs. Choi's door. The old woman answered slowly, her expression distant. "Do I know you?" "It's me, Nuri, 7B. You told me about me young." Mrs. Choi's face darkened. "I don't talk about the past anymore." "But you—" Mrs. Choi held up her hand. "There is no unit 7B. That room's been sealed since the fire." She froze. "There was no fire," she whispered. Mrs. Choi looked at her kindly, almost pityingly. "Child, we all heard her. We all tried to help, but it never ends well for the ones who stay." She stepped back and closed the door. The click of the lock echoed like a tomb sealing shut. That night, Nuri searched every file in her laptop. No recordings, no history. Her email account, logged out. The lease contract she had signed, gone. Her own name, no longer saved in her notes, not even in autofill. She typed her name into Google, invalid. She typed her name into her banking app, invalid. She picked up her ID card. The ink was faded, her photo blurred, and beneath her name, a faint line scratched into the plastic, no longer registered. At 3:13 a.m., the intercom blinked again. She didn't press play. It played on its own. A voice, not Mi Young, not her own, but a new voice, dry, administrative, indifferent. Tenant log update. Room 7B, status changed. Occupant is now part of the permanent archive. A pause. Then, audio sample preserved, visual profile complete. And finally, you may now record others. She stared at the speaker. Something deep within her moved. Not in her stomach, not in her heart, in her voice. As if her throat had become a hallway, and someone had walked inside. Some doors protect what's inside. Others contain it. And some, Nari now realized, weren't doors at all. They were entry points to something that didn't belong in time, or space, or the human mind. She hadn't slept in 2 days. Couldn't. Her apartment, or what remained of it, had begun to change. The light no longer fell the same way. The corners of the room had stretched just a little too far. Shadows lingered longer than the objects that cast them. And the walls? The walls had started breathing, softly, slowly, as if the building itself were asleep, dreaming of voices it once heard and trying to dream them back into life. At 3:13 a.m., the floor beneath her feet shifted. Not dramatically, just enough, like a heartbeat under concrete. The intercom didn't beep, the screens didn't flicker, but something opened. She didn't see it, she felt it. Not a door in her unit, a door beneath her, in the basement, in the space she had never entered, the one that always seemed to retreat just beyond reach, the one behind the unmarked steel room. She went down without thinking, barefoot, silent, guided. The hallway light on B2 had stopped working. She used her phone as a torch, but even it dimmed like the air itself resisted being illuminated. The air was thick, wet. The red thread was back now, but it no longer clung to walls. It grew out of them, like veins breaking through skin, tense, pulsing, leading her. It led to the wall at the end of the basement, the one with no door. Except tonight, it wasn't a wall. It was open, a slit of blackness in the concrete. No hinges, no knob, just an aperture, a wound, a door that opened inward. She stepped through. Inside, no lights, no pipes, just hallway. Concrete stretching in impossible dimensions. No turns, no exit, just forward. Each footstep echoed like it had fallen years ago. She passed rooms that weren't there before, alcoves carved into nothing where old appliances sat in dust, rotary phones, stacked TVs, cassette recorders piled like offerings. Each machine powered off, yet each one hummed softly, alive in memory. She passed a wall lined with tenant names, not printed, carved. She saw Mi Young's name, and then hers, Kwan Nari, etched in perfect letters. And beneath her name, something else. REC status active, direction inward. She touched it, and the wall pulsed. At the end of the corridor was a door, not made of wood, not steel, but mirror, fogged. Its surface rippled faintly. She leaned closer. Her reflection was wrong. It was older, eyes sunken, lips pale, hair wild, but smiling. And in the reflection behind her, a shape moved. Mi Young. No longer blurred, no longer just a voice. She stepped forward in the mirror until she stood directly behind Nari's reflection and whispered, "You came through." Nari turned. No one there. But the reflection smiled wider, and the mirrored door opened. Inward. Inside, a room of sound. The walls were cassette tape reels. The floor, old phone wires twisted into netting. The ceiling, a single light bulb swinging above a wooden stool. On the stool, a microphone, plugged in, waiting. And beside it, a chair, draped in red thread. She stepped forward. Each step changed the room. The air thickened. The microphone powered on. A red light blinked. Recording. Nari didn't sit. She spoke, Mi-young, are you here? No answer. Just the microphone, recording. Why did this happen to you? The reels spun faster, the light brightened, and a voice, not from the speakers, but from within her skull, responded. Because I listened too long. Because I answered too often. Because I stayed too still. A pause, and then, and now you understand me. The door behind her sealed shut. No click, no lock, just gone. She turned back to the microphone and saw that a cassette had appeared in the deck, labeled Nari, Night 1. It had already begun to spin. She tried to remove it. It wouldn't budge. The red light blinked faster. She stepped back. The walls shifted. The floor rippled. The reels on the walls began playing dozens of overlapping voices. Help me. I never left. You're almost me. If they hear you enough, you echo forever. Record, repeat, replace. The voices collapsed into one. Then silence. Then Mi-young, alone, whispered, "You opened the door inward. That means it doesn't close." When the light above the stool finally burned out, she found herself standing outside the mirror room once again. Back in the hallway, except now, the hallway led to her apartment door from the inside. She was back inside her own unit, but everything was reversed. Her furniture mirrored, her clock ticking backwards, her phone displaying the date as October 13th, 2017. And across the room, in the reflection of the black TV screen, Mi-young stood in her kitchen, wearing Nari's clothes, holding the microphone, smiling.
The intercom didn't blink anymore. It stared, a red dot like an open eye, always watching, always recording. No beep, no static, no scheduled hour, because time no longer mattered in Unit 7B. The clocks had stopped, and she no longer cared. What mattered now were the voices, the ones that weren't being sent anymore, but remembered. Nari stood in her apartment like a shadow of herself. She no longer checked mirrors. She no longer wrote in notebooks. Even her name had faded from the mail slot downstairs. Not scratched out, not erased, just quietly forgotten. She had become the kind of silence that builds inside old buildings, the kind mistaken for creaking pipes or faulty lights. But the messages had not stopped. They'd only changed mediums. That morning, she woke not from sleep, but from recording. The microphone beside her bed blinked. The cassette deck clicked. A new tape, unlabeled. She played it. Her own voice, monotone, dreamlike. Check the basement before they seal it again. A pause. Then, there's something down there. She tried to bury it, but it kept calling. Static. Then, a final sentence in Mi-young's voice. Don't let them bury me a second time. She moved like someone underwater, slowly, heavily, as though each movement cost a little more than the last. The hallway was dim. All the talismans on the neighbors' doors had fallen. The threads were back, but now they hung from the ceilings, tangled and wet, dripping like veins torn from bone. As she passed 4D, she saw the door ajar. Inside, a single cassette recorder. No furniture, no lights. The recorder played over and over. Check the basement. Check the basement. Check.
She descended the stairs, floor by floor, her hands trembling. And as she reached the basement level, she saw them, the doors that had never been there before. Lined along the back wall, 6 of them, unmarked, metal, narrow, all closed, except one, half open, thread leading inside. It wasn't the same space as before. This basement was lower somehow. Damp concrete turned to earth. The walls grew colder with each step. The air carried a smell. Not rot, not mold, but incense. Old, burned-out incense. And beneath it, rust. She stepped into the farthest room. The red thread trailed to a mound at the center of the floor, covered in torn tarpaulin, dust, and the faint outline of something buried. A body? She didn't want to guess, but her hands moved anyway, pulled the tarp back, layer by layer, until she uncovered a skeleton, curled, dressed in a red blouse, faded and torn. A microphone clutched in one skeletal hand, a cassette recorder in the other. And around the bones, tucked carefully into the folds of fabric, cassette tapes, unlabeled, dozens of them, each labeled in smudged marker. She is learning. She copied me. I'm forgetting my own voice. And finally, seal this room. If she finds a voice, she finds a way out. Behind her, something clicked. A cassette deck on the wall activated. The red light blinked. Playing. Mi Young's voice. They rewired the building after I vanished, but they didn't erase the path. If someone listens too long, she takes them. She took my echo. A pause. Then, and now, she's yours. Nari turned. In the doorway, a shape emerged. A figure. No face. Just a mass of dark hair, soaked and static. Body flickering like damaged footage, but wearing her own clothes. The figure raised a hand, held a cassette recorder, pressed play. Nari's voice echoed. I want to stay. I want to stay. I want... She dropped her phone. It cracked, but the screen still flickered. A final notification appeared. Recording complete. Audio preserved. Visual profile merged. Then a countdown. 3, 2, 1. The intercom beeped. Somewhere above her, the tenants stirred in their sleep, and on every intercom in the building, on every speaker, on every old deck still wired into the bones of Namhae apartments, a message played. Nari's voice, whispering, I'm still here. I never left. She backed away. The basement felt smaller now, like it had pulled shut around her. The figure advanced. No feet, just the sound of tape unspooling. She reached into the pile of tapes and pulled one, anyone, and flung it at the figure. It passed through. She threw another. Nothing. But then, she picked up the microphone from the skeleton's hand. It was cold, heavy, still plugged in. She held it up. Her finger shook. She whispered, You don't have to stay. For a moment, the figure froze, trembled, like it remembered. And then, everything went silent. She woke on the basement floor hours later, alone. The tapes, gone. The body, gone. The wires, the red thread, all vanished. Just
dust. And in her hand, a blank cassette, still warm.
After the basement, nothing was ever quite real again. Not the streets, not the sky, not even her own reflection. Nadi walked home in daylight, but the world around her moved like a dream. Too still, too staged, as though she had stepped into a recording of her life rather than the life itself. Back in her apartment, the door opened without her key. Inside, nothing was missing, and yet nothing felt like hers. The coffee mug she always used now had a chip she didn't remember. The blanket on her couch was a different shade of gray, and the photograph on her bookshelf, the one of her and her sister in Busan, now showed only one girl, her, alone, smiling at someone who had been erased. She turned on the lights. They flickered twice. She reached for her phone, but it no longer recognized her fingerprint. When she tried to unlock it manually, it auto-filled the name Lee Mi-young. And in the voice recorder app, one saved file, titled Final Message. She pressed play. Her own voice, but older, more distant. If you're listening to this, then I've faded. I was too curious. I listened too long. I opened a door inward and didn't close it behind me. And now, the building remembers my voice better than I do. A pause. Then, the echo becomes louder than the source. Soon, no one will remember I was ever anything else. Click. She stood there, shaking, unsure if she'd recorded that message herself or if it had been recorded for her. The lines were blurring between listener and recorder, between self and ghost, between Nadi and Mi-young. That night she dreamt of cables, wires coiled like veins, threads pulsing in the walls, the whole building humming, not with electricity, but with memory. And somewhere deep inside it all, a voice whispered, "She never left, neither will you." She woke to a knock on the door, not the intercom, not the doorbell, just knuckles on wood. She opened it. No one was there. But down the hall, the red thread had returned, thin, taut, leading once more to the basement stairwell, like it never stopped growing, just waited. She followed it, not out of fear, out of familiarity, like a path worn by routine. Down the stairs, past the fuse boxes, into the dark. But when she opened the basement door, it was no longer the basement. It was a room of intercoms, lining the walls, stuck to the ceiling, all of them blinking red, all of them playing at once. And in the center of the room, a stool, a microphone, and a woman, seated, head bowed, hair covering her face. She looked up, and it was herself, not Mi-young, not a stranger, but Nadi, or at least a version of her. Eyes empty, lips moving in perfect sync with the whispers echoing from every speaker. The figure raised a hand, pressed the record button, and said, "I'm still here." Nadi stumbled back, turned, ran, burst into the hallway. The door slammed behind her, but when she looked at the door, it read, 7B, Lee Mi-young, not Kwan Nari. Her name was gone. She rushed to the front lobby, to the tenant board. Her photo had changed. The image now showed Mi-young's face, faint blurred but unmistakable. And under the check-in, check-out column, checked in October 1st, checked out blank, still waiting. That night, she packed a suitcase. She didn't even remember what she put in it. She just needed to leave. She stood outside the building one final time, staring up at the 7th floor window. No light, no shadow, just a red dot blinking in the dark, watching. She moved to another district, a new apartment. No intercom system, no cassette players, no red threads. She bought a new phone, a new name on the lease, new everything. But some things followed. On her first night, at exactly 3:13 a.m., her phone buzzed. One voicemail. Unknown caller. She hesitated, then played it. The speaker hissed. Then her own voice whispered, "Hi, I'm new here. Do you have a moment to talk?" And in the background, a second voice overlapped hers, familiar, soft, weary. "I'm still here. I never left." That's how it ends. Not with a scream, not with a door slamming, but with a voice passed down, copied, preserved, played again and again and again, like a ritual in static, like grief carved into wire, like a voicemail no one deletes. Because some ghosts aren't trapped in rooms, they're trapped in systems. And all it takes is one more person to press play.